Welcome to the Same Day Podcast, where we discuss driving incremental business growth and other topics related to real estate, property management, and entrepreneurship. Now to the show at hand.
Matt Zalk here. I'm the host of the Same Day Podcast, where I connect with top business experts and real estate leaders. Past guests of the show have been Mike Bosch with Atento Capital, Lee Easton of Aerovision, Chip Gabarino, the local entrepreneur doing restaurants, commercial real estate, and of course the owner of Topeka Coffee, a great local coffee brand that has branched out nationally. Exciting for Chip and everyone involved with the Topeka brand. Today's episode is brought to you by Keyrenter Property Management. At Keyrenter Property Management, we are a full-service property management company helping our clients buy, renovate, and operate real estate assets. We help our clients build wealth while taking the headache out of property management. One of the ways we do that is by using remote team members or remote professionals, and we're going to hear all about that today with our current guest. But it doesn't matter what rental you have, single-family homes, condos, townhomes, apartments. We have the management solutions that you need. You don't necessarily need to know how the sausage is made, but you're going to learn a little bit about it today. But go to KeyrenterPMC.com for more information, or info@KeyrenterPMC.com. Want to send a huge shout out to the Keyrenter franchise team. That's Nate Tu and many of his associates, because I first met our guest today at a Keyrenter franchise summit, and it was a lot of fun. We got to spend a lot of time with Gwenn Aspen and her husband, Jeremy, who's a fellow pilot. So we bonded over all sorts of fun trips that we've taken and how we get our family into the planes and where we go. Without further ado, Gwenn Aspen is the CEO and founder of Anequim, one of the largest remote professional employers in Mexico. Anequim connects entrepreneurs, property managers, and small to mid-sized businesses with highly skilled, bilingual, full-time virtual assistants who live and work in Mexico. Prior to founding Anequim, Gwenn and Jeremy founded Wistar Group, a property management company that they sold in 2021. Gwenn is a powerhouse. She's a motivational speaker, a moderator, traveling around the country to talk about her passion of making small and medium businesses more profitable and providing amazing career opportunities for Anequim's employees. You're going to hear, well, I'm excited to talk to Gwenn Aspen right now. Gwenn Aspen, welcome to the show.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
This is so fun. I am really excited. We're going to talk all about remote team members today, but I want to know, what's the industry lingo? It's got I don't want to be offensive to anybody. Is this like an offensive space, or is this just like what the going trend is? Or we used to call them VAs, virtual assistants. Then they were doing so much more. They're not just assistants. They're like core team members. What are we calling remote team members these days?
Well, we use the term remote professional. And we use that term because a lot of people just don't put them in that same professional category.
Yeah.
And really they are. People who don't live in the United States can do any job someone in the US can do from behind a computer. And this is like a really hard concept for people to wrap their heads around. But I swear to God, it's true. And the results are clear. And people are having amazing teams with amazing culture and saving money at the same time. And everybody is happy. And their clients are happy too. So
I love that. I want to get into what are best practices for including people that are not physically in your office into your culture and making them feel like part of the team. But before we go there, I want to ask you, just for our audience, how did you get started with Anequim? What's the origin story here?
Okay, so the origin story is that my husband lived in Mexico for many years. And then in 2008, we were starting our own property management company. And he got a call from a former employee. And she said, things are bad in the US right now. We had just had the housing crisis, but things are horrible in Mexico. And I'm literally struggling to feed my child. Is there any way that you could provide some kind of job for me at your new company? I'd heard through the grapevine you started a business. My husband, for better or worse, is one of the most loyal people you'll ever meet.
What a saint.
It gets him in trouble sometimes, but he literally felt so responsible for this person. And so he looked up different technologies. This is right when VPN phones or the voice
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
internet, whatever phones came out. So he sent one down. She started answering the calls for our tiny property management company. It was a win-win. So then as we were growing, we just hired all her friends because they wanted jobs too.
Love
And we
that.
just operated like that as a property management company until 2016, when our friends from Denver were like, this whole thing in Mexico is going great for you. Can you do anything for us? And here we are today. We have over like almost 1,500 employees with
Wow.
over 300, mostly property management companies, but we can do other companies too.
It reminds me of like a scenario where somebody's like, this is going really well for you. Can you do this for us? And you're like, I wish I could. Can't. Yeah.
Well,
And
I
like
thought
if
this
you
was
just
going to be
flip the
my
coin on the other
mom's
side,
side job. It was supposed to be my side hustle, my mom's side hustle. I was like, oh yeah, I just do part-time quality assurance at Wistar. I can do this as a side hustle. And then it became our full-time job, and we even sold a property management company. So yeah, so that's how it got
love
started.
that. Love that. Um, we have been using VAs for a long time. In fact, when it was just me at our office, and now I think we're like 85 people, and half of them, 40 of them are remote professionals. So we are fully bought in, fully subscribed. But when it was just me doing everything in the early days, I guess that was like November of 2017, it was me and Glorian. And she was a saint. She was the only person that could like work at my pace. And I had to go through a couple of people to find somebody that was willing to accept my expectations, but also my like the speed at which I worked. And Glorian is still with us now. Love her. She's like my work wife. I don't get to spend as much time directly with her via text and Zoom and everything as we did originally, but she's still like our original gangster.
Yeah.
But we've grown tremendously since then. People now have teams under them. So we have a remote professional. We have our core VAs, our executive VAs, our all sorts of things, and they have formed teams, and they've grown in their leadership. Before they were doing some data input and they understood the systems, but now they're building their kind of team around them. My question to you is, what's the best way to really inculcate people into the entirety of the culture? Because it's difficult. We have our all hands meeting every year, and we've got 40 people on a screen, and they're participating and they get awards and they do all this stuff, but they're not physically there with us. And it hurts me. I mean, these people have been instrumental to our success, and sure, they're paid, right? But they're not like there to celebrate with us. What do we do to bring them in even deeper and help them feel the appreciation that we have and the love that we have for them?
Well, I think you bring up a few points. First of all, when you started, you probably weren't as good at managing this giant remote team as you are now. So it takes a little practice, or
Right.
you can use the cheat sheet, which is like a company like ours that just holds your hand through it. But the main thing that people forget is they don't do the onboarding like they would a domestic employee. And
Yeah.
that's like the first step where they get subpar results.
Yeah.
So it's really important if you see this person as like a full-time worker, like you have to also change your mindset. Instead of like a gig worker and treating them like a gig worker, you have to be like, this is like any other domestic employee, and this
Yeah.
can be a person I invest in long term. So then you start with mission, vision, values, like all those things. People forget to do that because people are remote. Additionally, somehow they forget that these people need like a great job description with KPIs,
Sure.
and then weekly you have to hold them accountable. The other thing that gets people in trouble is it is easier to ignore a remote person when they do something wrong and just not address the
Right.
hard thing than if
Right.
they're in your office. And so that the remote people don't get the feedback that they would if they were in the office. But if you know these things are the problematic pitfalls that people run into, and you know it on the front end, and you have someone holding your hand and making sure the onboarding goes well, and that the expectations are set, and a training calendar is set, and you are committed to giving feedback when it's needed, you can have the experience like you have, where you have a full team, and I'm sure you have people in charge of P&Ls and really high-end managerial tasks, and it's working great for you. In fact, it's probably more efficient because you're not wasting time in between meetings because you just have your schedule set and you're like live and die by your Google
Yeah.
Calendar.
Yeah.
And you don't have the drama and no one's touching each other in the break room. So you don't have any HR issues. And so it really ends up being a more effective and efficient community. And guess what? People like their jobs when it lacks drama, when
Yeah.
it lacks problems like that. And that's why they stay and they love these jobs. So is it the same? Can you have the same party at Christmas as you could if they were domestic? No. But at the end of the day, it's not about the trust fall or, doing beer pong together. It's really about every day working in an environment where you're
Cared
where
for,
you're
you feel
you're
appreciated.
respected and
Yeah.
you know what you're doing and you know you're contributing to the long-term mission and the clients
Yeah.
that the company serves.
So I love this. I love everything you said. Why? And I may feel this way and you don't feel this way because you're like in it all the time. Why do I feel like remote professionals have been slow to catch on in other industries? Property management has been an industry that's used remote professionals, non-domestic workers for a long time. And yet I don't feel like any of my friends that own HVAC businesses or plumbing businesses, there's nothing in the legal world. I mean, some of it is going to be like HIPAA compliance and regulation that I get, but in other industries that should naturally take advantage of the arbitrage opportunity to hire great people for lower costs, they're not doing it.
The reason that virtual assistants or remote team members, whatever you want to call them, has not caught on in other industries is because they have had larger margins. And I
Got it.
know that sounds like really basic, but because property management has been a low margin industry, it has been the one to adopt less expensive labor strategies without compensating with poor labor. Like that's the other misconception is like,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to be less quality. It really doesn't have to be the case. But that's why we caught on first is because we had to. I've talked to other industries, and when they just make so much, and they're just like printing money, it's hard to want to learn a new skill. And it is true. I think it's just worth being honest that it is a new skill managing people remotely.
Sure.
And if you're not incentivized or you don't really care about increasing your margins by doing so, you're not going to do it. But I think that the margins in many industries are changing and people are incentivized at this point, or they could see that they could reach their goals sooner if they
Sure.
just adopt the virtual assistant strategy.
Sure. I think to your point, I mean, they're so about the quality of the people that you can hire in other areas. We have folks that were, essentially chartered accountants for publicly traded companies. And now they're doing work with our accounting team. These are highly, highly skilled, super sophisticated, very smart people. They just happen to have been born somewhere where the GDP per capita is lower, and their pay schedule or their pay scale is different. And so the difference between hiring a super motivated, very intelligent, hardworking person from a country that validates and finds it worthwhile to have hardworking people versus the US, where it's much more expensive. And sometimes people feel entitled, especially in the last couple of years, the quiet quitting, all this kind of stuff. Like the younger generation has a tendency to feel entitled, where we're saying, thank you for showing up to work today. And they don't have the same work ethic. It's just a totally different ballgame.
Totally different ballgame. And you can not only find people, I mean, we have professors on our team, we have lawyers on our team doing a lot of the work that people in property management do, from maintenance coordination to executive assistants, you name it, onboarding specialists, all those kinds of roles. We have people at that caliber because we're also able to provide the benefits that a lot of small and medium-sized businesses can't do in the US to attract that kind of labor. I mean, the pay scale is different in addition. So this is like a bomb job, right? If you're in some other countries.
Yeah.
And they can also see how they could move up, especially if they're with a growing firm. And so you're not sacrificing quality. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite.
And so what do you say to people that are like, will I be able to understand these people? Will they have, general communication barriers? Can they speak to owners? Can they speak to tenants, especially in property management? And then in other industries, they'll be speaking to different people.
Oh my gosh, the quality of the English is insane. I mean, the people in Mexico that we work with, they know English is the route to having, a great career. And so they've been practicing and watching all of our movies, and they
Yeah.
do all the things American down there. And so
So
sure, there may be
they sound like Valley Girls.
sometimes it's I mean, I've
Possible.
told I've been told I sound like a Valley girl, and I think sometimes their English, their grammar and writing is even better than mine. And then you put AI with it, and
Yeah.
any kind of grammatical errors that maybe we saw a little while ago, it's
Yeah.
nothing that Grammarly can't fix. And
Yeah.
so it's great. I mean,
Okay. So if somebody is exploring um, a remote professional for the first time, what would the handholding process look like, the onboarding process through Anequim?
so with Anequim, and I'm going to say this like just broad strokes for anyone looking for any kind of role.
Yeah.
But the number one thing is being very clear about what the job description is.
Yeah.
What does winning look like in the role? Many times we have people who just think of like a job description, or they're really overwhelmed because like they're bad at email or whatever, which I totally relate to. But
No
and
judgment.
no judgment here. But when you say executive assistant, I do have to say it's the worst performing role. And it's usually
Got
the
it.
first
Interesting.
one people go to because they haven't thought through what that person's going to do once their email gets organized. So,
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll coach you on the role because we've seen this. This isn't our first rodeo. So, if your idea of the role is not as good as it could be, we'll be like, no, we think that this might be better. And
Yeah.
almost always people take our suggestions, but that's like the number one thing. And then the other thing people don't consider is the onboarding process, the process of having this person meet people in your company
Yeah.
has to be good, or they get the wrong impression about what's acceptable at your business. And so it's really important to have like the technology all organized, like what their logins are for all the things, what's their email, have that done before they get started. So
Yeah.
when you work with us, we make sure that you're set up for success because actually with Anequim, since we're a legal entity in Mexico, everyone's a legal employee. So if it doesn't work out, we're actually on the hook for a lot of socialized programs in Mexico. So we need it to work. And
Yeah.
you don't want to spend time with high churn either. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
Yeah. There are certain things though that like our team has remote professionals do that. So my philosophy is you're a productive person that is here in the United States. I want you to focus on things that can only be done in the United States. And then in property management, that's walking properties. That's I guess there are not that many things. That's walking properties. It's talking to the actual maintenance vendors when you're there and you need to look at this situation to make sure that we're not being built or duped or that this is the right decision. We're going to run new water lines. I've got to make sure that this is the right decision. I have to be physically on property. But for our remote professionals, they do so much. But I also say if it makes your life easier as a person here on a you're a high productive person, I want you to also utilize that person for that. So if you can if a team member's mother goes into surgery in the hospital, we have a remote professional send them flowers because I don't think it's a good use of Yoni, who's our head of marketing and sales, time to actually get on flowers.com and do that. But it's somebody on his team. It's a very good use of their time to show that our support and appreciation for that person and their mother. So we do that kind of stuff, but it doesn't fall into a broad, like a real description of somebody's job. How do you categorize 15% of somebody's time that's just going to be on like random things? And it kind of goes into that executive assistant role where it's not purely defined, but a really good executive assistant probably spends 6 months of their life being pegged to your hip to understand what kind of food you like on a plane and what kind of this you like, what kind of, do you want an Uber or a taxi when you get to the airport, whatever it is. Like, how do you define some of those things that are not quite definable? Or
Well,
is it just a bad
100%.
role?
No, it's not a bad role. And I have an executive assistant that I almost don't think I could live without because he does so many things like forms. If you're a mother and your kid goes to a camp,
Oh my
I mean, there's
God.
a form for
Oh my
every
God.
thing that they do.
The
So from
PTA.
from
Oof.
forms to camps to, making sure they get into this or that, my executive assistant does all those things. But they are kind of quantifiable, like forms, flowers, presents. I mean, the main thing is to think through that. But here's the key to an executive assistant role. is that I don't want you to be on a yacht in Croatia, Matt. I know that's one of your dreams. I don't want you to be on that yacht and wake up at like 3 a.m. and go, oh my God, my executive assistant doesn't have anything to do today. So what we have to think about are recurring tasks that they can do without being told that aren't those one-offs.
Yeah.
So good examples of that would be like quality assurance. So many people do not use quality assurance. And I'm like a huge on this. Like small businesses should have somebody doing those tasks, following up on any problem that happens and going back to the processes and procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that person really should uh, report to someone at the top. Also, there's a lot of investigating, like investigate my competition, investigate the software, investigate AI and how I could utilize it. Investigation should also maybe be part of the role of a remote professional. And then another one would be if marketing tasks. A lot of the time, people don't want to give up marketing because it's like the vision of their baby to the world, and they want to have a high degree of ownership. So I'm just saying that when we talk about that role, we want to think about what recurring tasks are also going to go in there so that you can enjoy a trip to Croatia and not think about your executive assistant.
Yeah, that's a quality assurance is a really interesting one. And if I define the tasks that I do as the owner broker of our business, I spend a lot of time poking around and asking questions. And I don't know how to outsource that. I click on, how do you do that? I just click on links and I'll look at stuff. I'll look at like the income and of rents, and I'll look at one that looks suspicious. Why did somebody pay $372.47? Like that's not an amount that you normally see. You normally see 1,000, 1,200, but not that small amount. And I start poking and going, why is this? Oh, they didn't pay their late fee, or they did pay that. Like, how do you handle that?
So for property management, the way that we handled quality assurance in the past was everything comes in through email or phones. If you investigate emails and phone calls from tenants and owners, you will find problems. I mean, almost always, or things that could be tweaked or done a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And so the role is to spot check things. And then when there are problems, and give people feedback on their emails and their communications, and then go back to the process or procedure. Or if there's a complaint, we use the Kaizen format, which we stole from Toyota, and we do a root cause analysis of why the problem happened. And then we give credit when the problem is fixed. We also quantify the amount of money that we try. Sometimes it's not exact, but what the fix to that problem, quantify that so that we can also give people who are in helping with fixing the problem, that goes in their file. Like, hey, good on you. You fixed this. You came up with the idea. The quality assurance person just makes sure that that process continues to happen and happens every day. When we had a property management company, which was a smaller organization than we have now, that was just a half day role. It was like from 8 to 11, they did quality, and then they did another job in the afternoon. But we did so much better because we all know that if you have good referrals, your business is going to grow. If people are just singing your praises right and left and you're the best customer service experience of their life, you're going to do great. So this is, to me, the number one role if anyone wants to grow their organization.
God, that gives me so much pause. Like we need to be doing a better job at that. We need to be doing a better job at that. I do it, but it's like, I shouldn't be doing it as a part-time hobby when I like come in and don't have anything to do and just start piddling around. It's just, and it's like upset to me. It's like obsessive. I'm like, where's the problem? Where's the problem? Where's the problem? And that's also bad. Okay.
No, it's not bad though, because you could have somebody just being your right-hand person. And that's the other executive assistant role is like, if you have a big initiative, you have a cultural change you want to make, you have some big initiative, or you don't like something that happens at your business, this can be the arm of your company that's checking on things. I'll give you one more example. We have weekly meetings and all the scorecard has to be filled out every Tuesday. And it's complicated because there are a bunch of different teams. So my executive assistant on Monday talks to anyone who doesn't have their scorecard filled out, so that when I go into my leadership meeting on Tuesday afternoon, I have all the data there for me to make sure I'm making good decisions.
Right.
So it's like another example of just making sure that there's accountability and people have things done. The other one is if you kind of go in to meetings, but you're not in the regular meeting, a lot of times you'll ask a question, you'll have it to do, and then no one follows up on it because you're not actually in that meeting every single week.
Yeah.
So making sure that this person follows up with that person to make sure that they get their thing done for you is another great task for an executive assistant.
Do you have George doing stuff like financial, like paying your credit card bills and like stuff that you
No,
don't want to do? No,
no,
financial stuff is kind of separate.
I have that done by our finance department. I mean, he does pay like my personal stuff, like if my kid runs out of lunch money and I have to
Yeah.
get
Fun
that.
that little balance. Yeah.
Yeah. So he does like those things, but in terms of a corporate, you know, that's done by a different department.
Okay. So you and I agree that we love remote professionals. There are going to be some people watching this that are like, oh my God, they're going to have access to everything. Things are going to go wrong. They're going to steal all my data. They're going to sell it to my competition. Like, let's talk about why some of those fears are unfounded, but let's also talk about some real stories of like things that have gone wrong. I've got some, and I'm happy to share them.
Okay.
But what have you seen? But first and foremost, like, why is it less of a big deal than some people might assume it is or would be?
Okay. So I was so worried about this when I started the business. I was freaking out about security.
Are you a natural worrier, or is
I'm
it
a
just a
horse.
side passion?
I'm always looking for danger. Like, where's the danger coming from? Well, and I really care about our customers.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all our friends. I want
Yeah.
them to be happy.
Sure.
So I read this book called The Thief in Your Organization or something. It's by Tiffany Couch. And she was a forensic financial analyst. And so she looked for stealing. And she said that the number one person who's going to steal from your organization is someone who gets the mail and puts things in the system. Because a lot of the time they just don't pay the taxes. That's like the number one way people steal is they have the tax documents that come in the mail, and then they put it in the system, but they take the money for themselves. The other way is if anyone is able to onboard employees or vendors and get the mail. That's the other issue. So you really have to lock down anyone who's able to onboard employees and have a good like auditing process and vendors. That's the other really bad place.
What's the onboarding? What's the play there on onboarding employees?
So then you could have
they add an extra employee and put your
Yes, you add an extra employee, or you don't remove an employee, and then you change their
bank and routing
number.
Yeah,
and then you take the check.
Got it.
And then if you have a fake vendor, that's the other one.
Yeah.
So the main thing is just to not have the same person doing that, and that's an in the office problem. The next thing is have a password protection software like Keeper or LastPass.
Yep.
So many people don't do that. The only time I've had somebody, like we've had actually amazingly no thievery, but I think it's because of our onboarding process, and we make sure that they have one of those password protectors.
Yeah.
We've only had 2 confirmed cases in the 8 years that we've been Anequim.
Wow.
2. And it wasn't for huge amounts of money. But anyway, it's really hard for somebody who's far away. Now, you have to manage your privileges in your software. This is huge. This is huge for anyone inside the office or outside the office. People will give privileges because they have a pet project, and then they won't remove the privileges.
Right,
and this is like a disaster for every business. So this is where the process for like at the very least have on your calendar to remove the privileges at a certain time frame, or change your password, or whatever it is.
Right.
So those are my keys. I don't know if that's helpful.
I mean, we use 1Password. I guess my fear is that there are softwares that we use across the entire organization, and we maybe change those annually or semi-annually, and everybody gets an email in the org that says we've changed these passwords. And none of those things have really sensitive data, but it could easily leak into other things. We do use 1Password though.
Well, when you remove somebody, you look at all the passwords. Like if you're very consistent about using one password, and you never give it like some kind of login in a different way, then when you are having someone go away, then you have a list of all the softwares that they have, and you change the password. And if
Yeah.
people are always when they go away, and then if people are always using LastPass, there's not going to be that run around of what's new
Yeah.
password, because it's in the system.
Yeah. We had a guy, and he had outsourced, or he had subcontracted some of the work that he was supposed to be doing, and was paying, I guess, a friend to do some of the work, which was an interesting one. So our perspective is, I guess we let him go. We explained to everybody why we let him go, why that was unacceptable. But I also was like, if he's paying somebody else less money to do the work that he's doing, is there a market to pay less for that job? I didn't quite understand. We also have a problem sometimes because we have people that are out east. We don't just go south to Mexico and Latin America. We go out east sometimes, and we'll find that like Friday morning our time is Friday evening their time. And so you call somebody and they're having like a party in the background. You're like, dude, you're supposed to be at work. I know it's nighttime your time, but you're supposed to be at work. And this is Friday. It's still a business day. And so we've had some problems like that. But overall, we've also had very few issues. We have not had any that I know of. I mean, because there's some stuff that could be, we could be outside of my locus of control or whatever, but like we haven't had people steal our data, sell it to anybody else, of course you have to segment and make sure that people are, there's, lines of control that you want to keep separate. So the person that enters keys into our key box form doesn't also have access to do other things related to the property. So yeah.
Yeah, you have to be strategic about it. I think it's important to be strategic. And I love the fact that you brought up stealing time. I do feel like stealing time is thievery, and people have had like two jobs at the same time.
Yeah.
But when you brought up the pay part, what a lot of people who just get their own VAs do the pay part wrong. It's really hard to recover from, and they will overpay people. We are working currently on this banded system that I'm super proud of. It wasn't my idea, so I can brag about it. It was one of our employees' ideas. It's the most amazing banded pay and accountability system ever. But that's when working with professionals is very helpful, because you can, and people do all the time, overpay. Then they find out what they're doing. And it's not like, the 80s where we never talked about our pay.
Yeah.
It's like they're going to tell
people
each other
know,
how much they make.
For sure.
And so making sure that you're doing things the right way with that will prevent you from having drama later down the line. And but it is very common that a remote professional or whatever is paid way too much, and it would make sense for them to pay someone else to do that job and then hold another job.
And is your banded system based on tenure and responsibility? Is it like a matrix?
It's based on, I could show it to you after the show, but it's based on, there are 12 different factors.
Wow.
And there are 4 bands of progress. And each role, you're not going to be perfect. Like if you're 4 at all things, like even executives aren't perfect at all 4.
Yeah.
But you have to get to like 40% of that band to be successful in most roles. And then you quantify where they actually stand and how close they are to the 40%.
Wow.
Again, yeah, it was from the Harvard Business Review, and it's really cool.
I love it. But this is why using a professional company to hire remote team members or remote professionals, you guys are thinking about this all the time in a way that those people that aren't using you for hiring their folks are not thinking about. What about cultural differences? What about stuff like, in the US, a lot of people get bonuses. In Latin America, they may not want bonuses in a traditional way, in a performance-based bonus system. They want to understand what their salary is going to be and not rely on a quarterly bump.
Actually, we really think bonuses are a great way to incentivize the right behavior, because you can stay in the bands. And then if someone does something way over the top, then bonusing is definitely a preferred outcome. So we're very interested in bonusing, but cultural differences are a thing. And one of the cultural differences is just protecting the downside. For any emerging market, there's not an abundance mindset. So things can be taken the wrong way a little bit more easily. So the way that we combat this is we are a camera on culture. So if I am sick, if I look like absolute garbage, I'm going to be humble and I'm going to present myself on screen. And the expectation is they do too. The reason is because so much is said through the facial expression.
Right.
So, and then I have a habit of calling out the facial expression, like, "Hey, you look really resigned. Tell me more about what you're thinking right now, because you said yes, but your face said no."
Yeah.
And so that has been very helpful in us having more transparent communication. But the other problem is the covering your butt, having like, I did the bare minimum, I'm not in trouble. You can't get me in trouble for this. So having the psychological security that nobody gets fired for making a mistake, but you get fired for covering up the mistake is a really important culture to have when you have remote employees.
And so camera on, you're saying if you're a remote professional and I'm your domestic counterpart, and we're going to sit down for a meeting, for our feedback meetings, for our one-on-one on a weekly basis, et cetera. We're always going to talk through the camera. We're not going to hide behind a blank screen on Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when you have to use your phone and it's not possible, but generally speaking, we're camera on all the time because of that thing, because I can tell what you're thinking and feeling.
What are some other tools or philosophies does Anequim support, promote for employers to encourage productivity and monitor what people are doing? And I should say, when you hire garbage in the United States, you're going to hire garbage in the United States. When you're hiring top quality people, you're going to get top quality performance. So with that caveat in mind, like should people be concerned about productivity tools where the mouse is moving, and all this kind of stuff? Or are there other things, or is it trust? Like, how do people feel confident that they're getting a full 40 hours out of a person that they're paying 40 hours?
So it's interesting you brought up the mouse thing. So we used to use an activity tracker, but with the advent of these little mouse movers, it's totally worthless. And so instead of lying to our customers and being like, "Yeah, your person's productive," we're like, let's be honest, these mouse movers are, $25 on TikTok.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to use. So it's really about performance indicators and being able to have metrics for every single role, and a North Star metric. A North Star metric can be as simple as 1 ring good, 2 rings bad, if you want to make it that simple. But everyone needs to have a metric that they're responsible for, and that goes in the scorecard. And so obviously at the leadership level, you're not looking at everybody's metrics, but at the manager and supervisor level, they're responsible for that team being productive. And so I think that being more accountable in the office, you don't have to be as metrics driven, because you can kind of see if people are working, even though they can hide from that too.
Yeah,
they're on
for sure.
their phone, swiping right on your time, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
But you feel better about it. So I think remote work actually incentivizes the best management behavior. And actually, this is one of the reasons why using remote labor will help you drive your business forward faster than using domestic labor, because you have to use best practices.
Yeah.
And you have to manage people based on their output, not on like their seat in the chair or, sitting in the chair. It's not chair time. It's, what did you do for me lately?
Yeah. I mean, we've always used the philosophy of if you can do what I need you to do in 20 hours and spend 20 hours on the beach, I don't really care. Leverage the tools and the resources at your disposal to get it done. On the other hand, if somebody can do what they're doing in 20 hours, shouldn't we saddle them with more responsibility, give them more pay, do other stuff? So it's a balance. And some people want to stay in their current role. We have property managers that don't really want to take on more. They don't want to earn more. They're kind of happy cruising. They're great at what they do. And we have other property managers that want to get paid a lot more, and to be paid more, you have to take on more properties. It's a very simple economic calculus of like, hey, the more you produce, the more you can come to me and say, I want to earn more money. And I'm forced to make a decision. Do I want to lose you or do I not want to lose you? And it's a very simple mathematical equation. And so I just wonder if we should be putting many more remote professionals with an individual property manager to just maximize their productivity? Or is there a point at which it stops? They just can't outsource more of the things that they're doing?
I mean, I think it's a really good strategic exercise to utilize people, like to really talk about what the job entails and how you could use people most effectively. And especially with all the new tools out, I mean, there has to be some time allocated to figuring out, how you can be most efficient and
Right.
stay ahead of the curve. So that could be some of the property managers' jobs while people behind the scenes are like executing. Um, but I think one of the other things that's interesting is when you use remote labor and you're worried that someone's not productive, sometimes at the price point, it makes sense to hire two instead of one and have them compete. If you're measuring things,
Interesting.
compete,
A/B testing. So you take half
A/B
my
testing.
portfolio, you take half my portfolio, and we see who performs better.
So you see who's performing better, and then also they know that there's that accountability there, and
Yeah.
so I think that that's a great choice. Now, I'm not a throw people at problems person. So
Yeah.
I want to heavily caveat that. I sometimes think that you can have too many people in an organization and it just becomes messier.
Yeah.
So you want to keep it lean, but there are some roles where it makes sense to like have them kind of competing for output. And then as a regular exercise, anytime things get like a little messy, going back to the org chart seems to be one of the most clarifying
Right.
exercises.
Right.
Or once a quarter, really reviewing what people's tasks are that they're doing, because you should be able to add more things on it if you become an expert at something.
Yeah. Okay, last question, and then I want to switch subjects. We've historically grown, and part of my desire to grow is not for my own sake, but because people in the organization want to make more money, and they need greater opportunity to manage other people and to manage different geographies and everything else. What's the growth opportunity for a remote professional as they kind of excel at what they're doing, and as they have more tenure within Anequim and within a company that Anequim is serving? And is there, I don't know what is it called, like the Roberts principle or whatever, where we
Oh,
elevate
Peter
people, the
principle.
Peter
You
principle, where we elevate people to their point of incompetence or something? Like, what's the solution to that? When we want to elevate people, we want to pay them more money, take on more responsibility, and ultimately they could fail, and that's a challenge.
So two things on that. I totally know where you're going, where you have to grow so that your people have opportunities. The thing with working, if you don't have that natural desire, and I think it's up to every business owner to know, like, what do you actually want in life? And maybe
Yeah.
you don't want to become the biggest company ever. Working with a company like Anequim allows your employees to grow maybe past what you have to offer.
Yeah.
And they can feel like they're learning something in the role that will get them to that next step because there are more opportunities through the organization as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is when we're talking about them growing, part of our role with some companies, we manage their labor. So sometimes they have jobs like taking midnight calls, maintenance, emergency calls has a high burnout rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so some companies tell us, and we kind of manage all their employees for them, but they say, this is our labor cost. You manage that. So we manage people out of the role into another role that they can succeed in to keep the labor costs down for that particular position.
Interesting.
So we can make really interesting labor decisions that don't negatively impact an individual, but support the mission and goals of the business owner in a way that they couldn't do if they weren't partnering with a larger organization.
But so that means if it's a tough job with a low entry salary, you put somebody in there for a little bit, they mature, grow, develop the professional skills so that they can handle something else. So they're now onto something else that's more favorable to themselves with a higher salary. And you bring in a new entry level person, train them and do it. And you kind of repeat that cycle. And people, as the business grows, people are excelling and moving trajectory.
Yes. And
Got
it
it.
makes sense for us because we can kind of mold the best behavior and
Sure.
then put them where they need to go.
Sure.
And then also another thing, if you do want to grow in your internal team, make sure that your people are not allowed to get a pay increase or any kind of role name increase until they have the documentation and have trained their backup. So that way they don't hoard information, because that's a horrible thing that happens at so many organizations. People hoard information so that they are not replaceable. If you say you can't grow here unless you make yourself replaceable, that behavior goes away. The other thing we found is in Mexico, we really try to we try not to have a big hierarchy. We tried hierarchy, it didn't work. So we really try to keep the levels very, very small for there's entry level, supervisor, manager. That's it. And we do that because we want to incentivize them to help each other. And you can have a mini role of being a mentor, but that's not a position change.
Yeah.
So incentivizing mentorship and helping other people at the business has to be a core value of how the business operates and is organized, I think, for it to be most successful.
Awesome. I love that. The delegate and elevate from traction or whatever. So we should always be attempting to replace ourselves and moving on to other things, even if that means yacht trips in Croatia. Gwenn, I love this stuff. What are you reading? What should other people be listening to? Podcasts? What's on your bedside table that helps push you forward as a business owner, as an owner of a business of remote professionals? Where do people go for more inspiration for the likes of Gwenn Aspen?
Oh gosh, I read weird stuff. So I'm reading a jujitsu book now, the Breathe book by Gracie. I can't remember which one.
One of the Gracie bros.
One of the Gracie brothers. So that's what I'm currently reading at this moment. I'm loving Diary of a CEO for podcasts right now, but I listen to all those podcasts, Lex Friedman, and still a fan of Tim Ferriss. And so I don't know, I read the paper all the time. I'm always trying to get Harvard Business Review is a big thing at our organization, but I'm always just trying to take things from other industries and seeing how it fits with us.
Yeah. That's amazing. Taking stuff what's the word I'm looking for? Frameworks from other areas and applying them to your business.
Yeah. Ben Horowitz has a great newsletter. So there are some great newsletters out there that are just about industries that I'm not even part of that I enjoy. So
that's Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz, right?
Yes.
Love that. Gwenn Aspen is the CEO and founder of Anequim, one of the largest remote professional employers in Mexico. Anequim connects entrepreneurs, property managers, and small to mid-sized businesses with highly skilled bilingual full-time virtual assistants who live and work in Mexico. Prior to founding Anequim, Gwenn, as she talked about today, and her husband, Jeremy, founded Wistar Group, a property management company that they sold in 2021. She's a powerhouse, as you can tell. She's also a motivational speaker, a moderator, traveling around the country to talk about her passion for making small and medium businesses more profitable and providing amazing career opportunities for Anequim's employees. Gwenn, where do people reach somebody if they want to go to, I presume they don't reach out to you directly, but if they want to reach out to you or they want to reach out to Anequim, where do they go?
Anequim.net.
Love that. Anequim.net. Anequim.net.
Yeah.
Love it. Gwenn, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really fun.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Same Day Podcast. Tune in to a new show each week and be sure to subscribe to get future episodes.